Hey everybody, good morning. This is Sally. Oh, I guess almost good afternoon at this point, it's noon. Welcome to today's webinar. We're caring for holiday plants. This is the first of our series of holiday classes. So if you haven't checked out our schedule online, I would encourage all of you to go to maryfieldgardencenter.com, check out the full schedule. But we're glad we have Gretchen with us today. I'm just gonna go through a couple of things as you all are signing on. I see our numbers going up. So for those of you who've attended our classes before, just bear with me for a couple minutes. You guys have already heard the spiel I'm about to give. So as you're logging in, you're on mute. We can't hear you when you speak. So the way that you can ask questions to Gretchen is to open up that Q&A box on your menu on the Zoom bar, type your questions in, and then when you send them, I'll receive them. So Gretchen's going to be taking questions at set points during the presentation. So just be prepared if you send it in. We'll be holding those questions until certain points. So she'll be reviewing a plant and then taking questions on that plant. There'll be some time probably for general Q&A at the end. So just be prepared to type those questions into the Q&A box. Next, Gretchen sent out some materials before the class. If you did not receive those, she might be referring to them during the presentation. I'm not sure, but we'll be sending them up following the class as well. So don't worry about that. You can get them by email after the class. So I think that's about all. Gretchen is a plant specialist at the greenhouse in our Fair Oaks store. She also runs her own Instagram account. I believe it's called Greenhouse Girl. And she's great. She knows a lot about holiday plants. She's fantastic. I think you all will really enjoy her. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the class over to Gretchen. Gretchen, thank you for being with us today.
Am I here?
You're here.
This is the first time for me doing a webinar on Zoom. Usually I do the seminars in our classroom right across the hall, and I'm used to seeing a lot of smiling, friendly faces. So it's a little different, but hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about care of 4 of what I think are the most popular holiday plants. We have a lot of different holiday plants down in the greenhouse, so if you haven't stopped by, feel free to do so if you are going out and about. The first one that I want to talk about is one that I think really personifies this holiday season. Well, the Christmas tree is probably number 1, but number 2 would be the poinsettia. Because I personally have fond memories of when I was little. There was a bank in our town that had a huge fountain, and they'd close it down in the winter, and the day after Thanksgiving, all these red poinsettias would appear on it. Of course, they were artificial. I grew up in New Jersey. But ever since then, I just think of, and of course, I don't have a red one with me today because I wanted to show off all the different ones that we have. We have about 20 or so different varieties of the 100 varieties down in our greenhouse right now. So I want to talk a little bit about buying one, the care. Sally said that you should have received a little schedule I'm going to try to go by. But what I like to do when I talk about a plant is talk about where it grows natively. When I see a new plant, whether it's something coming into the greenhouse or something on the internet, I always do a little research to find out where it grows natively, because these plants here are all tropical to us in the US. That means that they don't grow natively. They cannot spend the winter outside. They're not cold hardy, but somewhere in the world they're growing with no care at all, which blows my mind, because we have people bending over backwards trying to keep them alive in their homes, and somewhere in the world they're growing naturally. So as far as the poinsettia, I think it's going to help a lot to know that this plant is actually native to Mexico, to Central and South Mexico. When I think of Mexico, I think of margaritas, but I also think of bright, hot sun, warm, sandy soil. So keep those things in mind when we talk about the care in a few minutes. That's what you're going to want to replicate. You don't need to make a beach in your house, but you definitely want to keep in mind that they like it warm and they like a lot of sun. They were brought, I think it's a really interesting story. I don't have a lot of time to talk about the background, but if you do want to research a little bit more, you can Google legends and history of the poinsettia, and you'll probably come up with the name Joel Roberts Poinsett. So he was the ambassador, the first ambassador from the US to Mexico. And back in the 1830s, he found these growing and he was just enamored with them. And that's how he brought them back to the US. And the rest is pretty much history. It's actually a euphorbia. So euphorbia, you may be familiar, looks like a cactus. This is a euphorbia. And a lot of you may know crown of thorns. This is a little teeny one. It's the only ones we have in the greenhouse now, but this is a very, very popular euphorbia. So these guys, I would say, are all cousins. So you're going to treat them. The euphorbia that we have in our greenhouse or in our cactus and succulent area, that's how you're going to try to treat them. Poinsettia actually translates to most beautiful euphorbia. So that's what he named them. He thought they were gorgeous. So they came here. The Aztecs had used them for hundreds and hundreds of years. There is sap inside them. It's we call it latex. That was used for medicinal purposes. They used the dye to make clothing. But here we just enjoy them as part of the holiday. So now that we've gone over kind of the native habitat, let's talk about what you want to look for when you're buying one. When you're buying one, you want to make sure that the foliage, the leaves are all nice and green. You don't want any yellow leaves. You don't want any drying leaves. And speaking about the leaves, these are called bracts. These are very colorful leaves that are around the yellow flower in the middle. So that's a little bit of trivia you can give out if you ever go to parties, cocktail parties again, or you can talk about your dinner table. All the flowers on all the different colors of poinsettias are yellow because the flower is this little part in the middle here. These colorful leaves around the edge are actually called bracts. So you want to make sure that the leaves are nice and green. The bracts have really good color. You want to look at the bracts and make sure you see these leaves. It might be hard to see, but you don't want to see any green or black edges. A little bit is okay, but you want to make sure that the color extends all the way out to the edge of the bract. You want to look for a nice full plant. You can see this one's nice and balanced. A good rule of thumb is you want to make sure that what's above the pot is roughly 2 to 2.5 times the height of what's below the pot. You want to make sure that you're looking at the plant from all angles, and you want to feel the soil too. You don't want it to be super dry, and you definitely want to make sure it's in a draining pot. We're going to get to that with the care. So after you've picked out your poinsettia, another point that's really important, you don't want to buy one that's wrapped up in plastic. That's really important. It's important to sleeve them when you leave where you buy, but if you have them wrapped in plastic, they emit ethylene gas. It's a natural function in a greenhouse or out in the wild. It's going to disappear into the air. If they are trapped for a period of time in a plastic sleeve, they will quickly wilt and they will die. So beware of buying them when they're already sleeved. So now we're going to talk about getting them to your house. As I said, you always want to make sure that you protect them. And at Maryfield, we will have a paper sleeve. We have them in all different sizes, and all of our tropical plants in the winter are always going to be sleeved. You want to treat it like a little baby, because a lot of my friends say, Gretchen, I bought a poinsettia, I brought it home, I just don't have a green thumb. 3 days later, it's drooped. It's probably nothing you did. You probably brought it out of a warm place into your cold car, didn't preheat the car, didn't sleeve it, stopped at Costco, spent a couple hours, was in your garage. So you want to treat it like a baby and make sure that when you transport it to your house, you keep it nice and warm. When you get it home, you want to unsleeve it and put it where you're going to have it for the winter. And that brings us into placement. Again, Mexico, sun, really nice, bright, sunny window. Now I understand you want to put them in your table, that's fine. But just remember for the long term, they need a lot of light, and you're going to want to remember to water them. So they do require that you water them. If you have it in a pot like this, simply take it out, take it to the sink, give it a water when the top of the soil is completely dry and starting to pull away from the pot. You don't want to give it little drips and drabs. Think of Mexico. And that is going to be how you take care of your plant through Christmas. Interesting fact, when they're blooming, you do not need to fertilize them. So you can just bring it home from Maryfield, place it in your house. Don't worry about fertilizing. That's going to be if you decide to keep it throughout the year. And I will spend just a little bit of time on your care sheet that you received. It does go over what you need to do to keep it throughout the year if you want it to rebloom. This is a fake fact, fake news. I'm making it up, but I would say about 80% of the people that buy them just keep them for the holiday season, and that's perfectly fine. If you do want to keep it through the winter and have it hopefully bloom the next year, follow the directions that are on our care sheet. The most important thing that people forget is it does tell you right on the care sheet to cut them back to about 8 inches when they stop flowering, usually in March or so. People don't like to cut the plants, they get nervous. Believe me, cut them back, they'll be bushier, there'll be more flowering. And the last tip I'm going to give you is the light and dark. People say, I got to find a closet or somewhere, you have to put it away for 14 hours every day. Use a trash bag. You simply put your plant and then you're going to close it up for that time. And that's not going to allow any light in there, and you don't have to worry about spouses entering the closet where it's put away, and you should have a beautiful looking poinsettia blooming next year. So that's what I have on poinsettias. I'll take any questions right now. I know it was quick, but we have 4 plants to go through. So Sally, do we have any questions at all?
We've had a couple of questions coming about holiday cactuses, but nothing on poinsettias. So I'd say we can move on for now.
Okay, they're gonna be coming up after the next plant.
Yeah, definitely some interest in holiday cactus.
On how to get them to rebloom, you can always.
Okay, actually, we've just had a question come in. If it's fine, we have one person wants to know which part of the poinsettia is poisonous for cats.
Okay, so that's when I grew up, we had 2 cats, and we were told that they are the most deadly plant. You know, don't have them in your house if you have cats. The ASPCA has kind of flipped back and forth on this recently. It's kind of like the thing where the baby should sleep on their sides, they should sleep on their backs. They still are listed as toxic, but they're not believed at this point to be deathly toxic. So the whole plant is actually toxic. So the flower, the bracts, the leaves, the stems, and the sap. Okay, but unlike when I was growing up, and unlike even 4 years ago when I started working at Maryfield, the ASPCA has changed their stance that it still is toxic, but it's mildly toxic. So it will cause mouth irritation, it can cause some nausea, but it's not the highly toxic plant like some of the other tropicals. But if you're worried about that with your cats and dogs, then there is another plant that we're going to be talking about that's totally safe, and you may want to reconsider the poinsettia.
Thanks, Gretchen. We've actually had a few more come in. Okay, the next question is, what does it mean when you have leaf drop?
Oh, okay. So leaf drop, it depends on when it is. If it's okay, let's say that you're buying it right now and it's in bloom and you bring it home and you start getting massive leaf drop. Leaf drop on the bottom of the plant is a normal situation. 1 or 2, they do dry up, just pick them off. If you start seeing leaves drop, especially from the top of the plant, that is a reaction to some sort of stress. So it could be that you brought it out in the cold. It could be a watering issue. You may be letting it go a little bit too dry. So it's telling you something, and you're going to need to figure out what that is. But like I said, a few leaves down here, you can see there's a little teeny one right here. Just pick those off. But if you start seeing any of the bracts drop or the leaves on the top, then it's a little bit stressed. Probably a watering issue, or actually light. It's telling you that it wants a lot more light.
Okay, we've had more come in, so just tell me when you need to move on, but we'll get through as many of these as we can. The next question is, how long should the poinsettia be placed in the garbage bag for months, and how often should they be watered during that stage?
Okay, so again, it's on the sheet. You're not going to water it. It's going to be completely dormant. So what it's trying to replicate is in Mexico, people say, Gretchen, when this guy discovered them, they were all blooming, but no one was like altering the lights. You remember Mexico was out in the country. They didn't have skyscrapers. They didn't have street lights. It gets completely dark at night. where they grow in the wild. So that's what you're trying to replicate. And so it tells you on here 14 to 15 hours each night. You want to have it be at least 14 hours. And you want to, doesn't matter about watering, doesn't matter. The big point is though, that when you take it out for those 8 hours, it wants to have bright light. So you can't leave it in the closet and kind of open up, place it somewhere that it has nice bright light during the day, but then at night, set your clock, 7 p.m. You're going to go all the way until 9 a.m. the next day, take the bag out, nice bright light. And then you do that all the way until you start doing that. It tells you should put them outside. You can keep them inside. There are ladies that come in that have had poinsettia and they say, I've kept it on my piano for 5 years and it just blooms. It's not going to bloom like this, but follow the directions. And I think you'll be really surprised. It actually is really easy. The hard part is being dedicated to giving it that darkness.
That makes sense.
Was there one more?
There's a few more, but if you have time for one more, we'll go ahead and give that one. Are there any new or unusual poinsettia colors at Maryfield this year, and what's your favorite non-red?
Okay, so I did a little video for my Instagram of all the different ones we have. I love it. So this is a new one this year. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. It's called Gold Rush. It's similar to one that we get in around Thanksgiving called Autumn Harvest, but that one's more of like an orangey. But this is actually really pretty, and we display it with this one, which I can't remember the name. I always forget the name of this one, but they look really nice together. Not real Christmassy, but for people that have more of like a modern or a transitional contemporary decor, these were gorgeous. So Gold Rush. One of my favorites that you don't see many places is Poinsettia. So the Poinsettia, they are poinsettias, but they have very small, compact bracts, and they're in vivid colors. So this is the light pink. There's one called Pink Blush that's to die for, but we sold out of them. They're very light pink. The leaves on those are like a light green, marbled. One of my all-time favorites, see, I could talk about this all day, is this one right here, which is called Tapestry. It has red bracts, but then it will have these ones that are marbled, and I don't know how well you can see it, but that's a favorite. And then of course, I have to talk about this one, which is everyone's favorite. This used to be called Jingle Bells up until last year. Every year it was Jingle Bells, and now all the growers are calling it Red Glitter. I don't know why. But we probably have about 20 different types. And like I said, there are over 100. So come in and again, if you're not shopping, feel free to call and ask for the greenhouse. We can text you pictures and we can set it up for a really nice curbside delivery. We'll have it all wrapped up for you. So it's contactless. So if you want to get something new, you're not sure what we have, just call us and we'll help you out. We do it every day. So I think that's it because I really do need to talk about the other plants. So if you don't mind.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Next on the list is going to be cyclamen. And I'm not sure if I hit everything, but if I didn't, you can always email and ask questions later. So cyclamen, I have to admit, I don't remember seeing cyclamen ever before I worked at Maryfield. And that's something that most people, I don't know if they're familiar with them or not. But they're beautiful. And one of the first things that I put down for the cyclamen is attractive features before I even talk about where it comes from. Cyclamen to me are just amazing. Well, let's talk about the flowers first, because the flowers are what to me is the most amazing. They are erect, and then the actual flower seems to droop upside down. I don't know if you can see it on here. They come up as these little teeny buds, and then they pop up and they have these gorgeous, again, we have so many colors of cyclamen. This is a pink and white. This is an all white. And then of course we have a lot of people's favorite, the holiday red. And what's best about them is they can bloom for up to 3 or 4 months. So you're getting this gorgeous plant that will be blooming way past the holidays. When they stop blooming, the foliage, I think, is just as exciting. It has this marbled pattern on them. They're heart-shaped leaves. So they're just a beautiful plant. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I buy them and I treat them like an annual. And I know a lot of people think that's, that means that I keep it. And then when it's done blooming, I put it outside in my compost in my garden. I return it to the earth because I don't want to go through the hassle of keeping it around. I have a lot of other plants. So don't feel bad if you want to do that, but we have the care sheet that will tell you how you can get it to rebloom. So the cyclamen, again, let's start from where it grows. Cyclamen, and if anyone's familiar with primrose, which we have in the spring, they're in the same family. So primrose and cyclamen, they're cool weather bloomers, early spring, late for primrose, winter for this guy. And again, these are florist cyclamen. They're the ones that you see for sale. There are some types of cyclamen that are cold hardy, but they're not sold here. So this is always the one. When we're talking about a cyclamen, it's tropical, can't go outside, except for during the summer. Native habitat. So these were originally found in the Mediterranean basin, which is going to be Europe, Northern Africa, and actually some parts of the Middle East. And where they grow there are typically going to be very rocky areas, mountains. They're going to be in woods, alpine meadows. So think about walking through the woods. It's a beautiful day. You're looking down at the ground. What do you see? Ferns, moss, and cyclamen. So it's bright in there, but it's cool. It's also very moist and humid. So keep that in mind when we get into the care. Talk about some buying tips for cyclamen, because cyclamen, just like the poinsettia, you're going to see available other places. I wanted to show you what you want to look for and why I think the ones that we have at Maryfield are the primo ones. When you buy a cyclamen, the first thing you want to look at is to make sure that the blooms, the flowers are erect. You don't want to buy one where they're drooping. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, they're heavy, that's why they're doing that. You want them to stand up straight. The other thing you want to look at is you want to make sure that there are lots of these little buds coming up here, because when these ones fade, you want other ones to be coming up to bloom. Of course, you want to look and make sure that there are no yellow leaves. Yellowing leaves, especially around the base, can mean that they have been kept too soggy. Again, make sure it's in a pot with a drainage hole. And you want it to look uniform. You want it to look nice and full. You don't want it to be flat on one side. And it should just look perky and very pretty. Oh, and the blooms should be vibrant. You don't want to buy anything where they look kind of faded out. I'm going to give you a tip that I only heard about. I've never seen anyone on the internet talk about it. You hear about deadheading, pinching your pansies and things like that. The thing that most people would think intuitively is, let's say this is a bloom that's gone, just pinch it off, no problem. You don't do that with cyclamen. With a cyclamen, what you want to do is it's faded. You want to follow the stem all the way down to the bottom, and you want to twist and pull, and you want it to come out kind of like you were pulling a dandelion out from your lawn by the root. Oh, I broke that. No, it actually looks good. It comes to a point. So you don't want to cut them off. You want to pull them out gently. And what that does is that signals to the plant, oh, one has been pulled out by its root. I'm going to send up another bud. So if you do that consistently, you really can get these to bloom for 3 or 4 months. So that's my little tip for you guys. Let's talk about what you're going to do when you bring it home. Again, you want to make sure, even though they're cold weather bloomers, we will go ahead and sleeve them. But remember, cool weather. They don't like my house. You want to put them somewhere in your home where it's going to be a little bit cool, especially in the evenings. They can go as low in the evenings at 55 to 65 during the day, 45 to 55 at night. That's not my house. I work in a greenhouse. I like it warm. If you see it starting to wilt dramatically, it's too hot. So when I have them, I put them upstairs in my bathroom that is over my unheated garage for the evening. It's a little cooler there. So feel free, if you keep your house a little bit cooler and the poinsettia don't like it, this is your plant. The other thing that's really important is they like high humidity, and that can be a real problem when you have winter. So yes, it would be great if you could put it right near a humidifier, by the kitchen sink where you're always washing dishes. Believe it or not, that's always going to be a little bit higher humidity. But a little trick that I love, and anybody who knows and has shopped with me, you can make a pebble tray. Super easy. I probably have at least 10 of these in my house for all different tropical plants. They don't have to be ugly. This is a dinner plate, stone, pour a layer of stone on the plate, and then you simply add water. And like I said, I have philodendrons, I have some really rare plants, I have all different plants sitting on pebble trays. You don't want the drainage holes to come in contact with the water. That's where the pebbles come in. You simply place the cyclamen or the plant on top of that, and the water is going to evaporate. And as it's coming up, it's going to make this whole area around the plant a lot more humid. And I have to fill my pebble trays every single day. I thought my dog was drinking the water out of them, but that's how dry my house is. So definitely, if you're thinking about a cyclamen, a pebble tray is a great idea. And you can use shells, you can use glass beads, you can use a number of things. These are just some polished stone that I bought downstairs in the greenhouse. So we're talking about where we're going to put them. They want really nice bright light. They want really good humidity. You're going to use your pebble tray for that, and cool temperatures. So don't put it by your stove. As far as how you're going to care for them, nice bright light. They like to stay moist. Think about, those woods that they're growing in, but they don't want to be soggy. So if you do have it sitting in a saucer and you water it, make sure you remove that water from the saucer. You want to touch the soil. And I tell people, when any plant is new in your house, you just want to touch the soil. They say, Gretchen, how many times a week should I water it? I water all my plants on Fridays. And I say, no, you need to just take your finger and touch the soil. You want to make sure this soil is moist. When it starts to feel like it's drying out a little bit, give it a nice watering. Unlike the poinsettia, which you're going to touch and you want it to be dry and pulling away from the sides, this is the one plant I'm talking about today that likes to stay moist. So put it somewhere that you're not going to forget about it. Check it, and then you'll probably figure out it's usually, in your house, it may be 1 or 2 times a week. And then as far as reblooming, I have never tried to get one to rebloom, because honestly, by the time that they're done blooming in my house is very warm. They look a little sad. But if you're interested in how to keep it, because a lot of people, one of my coworkers does, you need to get the care sheet that we emailed out. If you didn't get it, we can certainly send it again. And it's going to walk you through exactly what you need to do. After 3 or 4 months, the flowers will fade. The leaves will start turning yellow. You want to stop watering it. This is going to be probably around March or April. So you have to, don't worry, it's going to look not that great. But most importantly, if you have one, pull it up, put it, and look, there's a thing that looks kind of like a potato down here. That's a bulb-like corm. That is where they grow from. So you are going to cut back the foliage. You're going to take that little potato thing and you're going to store it somewhere during the summer, like a cool garage or your basement. And you're not going to water it. It's going to go completely dormant. And then at the end of the fall, you can follow the instructions for how to bring it back. The one thing I will tell you is that it will probably never look like this. These are on what I call a greenhouse high. They've come from the grower who is using intense light, super doses of fertilizer. And even if they were returned back to the grower, subsequent blooms are not going to be this full. But people, and actually they will sometimes throw out a few blooms in the middle of July if you have them outside. So they're fun. I tried it for 1 year, but I didn't make it the whole way. But they're at a good price point that you can just buy new ones next year, and that's what I do. So with that being said, Do we have any questions on cyclamen?
We do have a few questions on cyclamen. The first one is about someone who they wanted to keep theirs, so they let it go dormant and they haven't noticed any new growth. So she wanted to know if there's a way to revive the plant at this point or if it's probably dead.
So that would have gone dormant over the summer, and then you wait to see little bits of green popping up. So I'm assuming that they're saying they didn't see any new growth.
Haven't seen anything, yeah.
May not have been stored. Sometimes it's not a guaranteed thing. You could try. I mean, what I would probably do if it's at this point, I would take it out, pot it in a small pot. I would put maybe a plastic Ziploc bag over it to get some really good humidity going, and return it to a bright area and see if you can get some of that green to start. It's like I said, it's not a guaranteed thing. Depending on, maybe it was a little bit too warm, it didn't go fully dormant, or there are a number of factors. But what I would do if it was mine, I would take it, pot it, small, well-draining soil, nice bright place. I would definitely put a plastic bag over it, a small piece of a dry cleaner bag or Ziploc. That's going to keep the humidity in there. And then email us and let us know if that works.
Sounds good. All right, the next question is, do you know if cyclamen is poisonous to dogs?
I should know that. And I believe that, I don't, okay, so here's the thing. If I was in the greenhouse, I should know that because I know all of the plants. I'm not thinking right now. But the best tool to find that out is to go to the internet. And what Maryfield goes by is the ASPCA.org website. So maybe here could go to that website and let me know. I believe that they are fine, but don't listen to me. I know that the next plant I'm talking about is cat and dog safe. I'm just trying to picture our sheet. I should know, but I'll have the answer for you after that. But like I said, the ASPCA.org is the ultimate place to go. Not only does it tell you if the plant is toxic to cats, dogs, or horses, it does tell you what the intensity of the toxicity is. So it'll tell you what the symptoms are. Again, some are just mild irritation, vomiting, others are more serious. So shame on me for not knowing that.
I recommend that site too. I use it for my sister's dog that eats plants.
But I know this. I'm thinking about what I'm going to be saying next. So we'll have that answer for you by the end of the seminar. Good way to stop me.
All right. So if cyclamen is in a decorative pot, how do you use the pebble tray?
The same exact way, because the thing is that you don't want the drainage holes to come in contact with the water. So a decorative pot is actually easier. So let's do this. Do a little switcheroo. Here is our cyclamen, and you have it in this decorative pot. Again, when you water in a decorative pot, you want to take it out, bring it to the sink, water it, let it drain, and put it back. If you water it in place, then you need to take it out and dump this water out. You don't want it to sit. So let's say that we have this and we want to put it on a pebble tray. That's it. Much easier. You don't have to worry about the water coming in contact with the soil. The idea of a pebble tray is not to have the plant self-water and suck up water. It's to have all that water around the plant, and then it's going to evaporate and help the humidity. So this is a really nice size plate. You don't have to have a plate this big, but this is really going to increase the humidity. I have a little humidity gauge, and it's amazing when you look and see how much more humid this area is around the plant than even like a foot away. So I would just take the decorative pot, whether it has a saucer or not, stick it right on the stones. And then you just remember every single day, you're going to be like, where did that water go? And you just fill it up, and that's it. Do rinse it out about once a week or so. Once every 2 weeks, I take all the stones out, I rinse them, especially if it's in a bright area, you can get a little algae. But you can make some really pretty pebble trays. Anything else?
Just one more about cyclamen. This person had issue with getting mites on her cyclamen, and then they spread to other plants. So how do you deal with that if that happens?
So yeah, there are certain plants that attract mites more so than others. Ivy is one of them. Alocasia is another house plant I feel gets mites. I haven't seen a lot of mites on cyclamen, but yes, they are prone to them. So if you notice, and here's the other thing I want to tell you, cyclamen have a lot of pollen. So you will notice what a lot of people think is evidence of spider mites, but it's not. So the pollen, you can just brush it off. But if you see webbing and you start seeing the leaves get little yellow dots in them, that's a sign of mites. You want to isolate that plant. I had a plant in my house that had mites and I didn't even touch it. I just brought a plastic trash bag over, stuck it in the bag, and tied it up, brought it out somewhere else. You want to isolate the plant. I didn't throw it out, but you even just moving around, they fly, they're in the air. So you want to isolate the plant. That's the most important thing. And then immediately, if you have insecticidal soap at home, hit it with the insecticidal soap. If you don't, good rinse will get rid of all the mites that are on there, about 80% of the mites, and then you can come to Maryfield and get the product. But you want to isolate. And this cyclamen is $9. To me, and I know people don't understand this, but I have a lot of plants. If something is an inexpensive, readily, easily replaceable plant, I will put it out in the compost and toss it. But if you notice it, get it away from your other plants. If it spreads to your other plants, come in and talk to us. We can give you some tips for dealing with the spider mites, but noticing the problem early is your best course of action. So I tell everyone, when you're watering, that's the time to look and make sure that you catch anything early.
Thanks, Gretchen. That's all of our questions on cyclamen.
Good, because I don't want to go over and I still have 2 other plants. So the next plant that we're going to talk about is going to be the holiday cactus, commonly called Christmas cactus. You should have a handout that we sent out about that. Schlumbergera is a very fancy name. That's for the 2 most common types that are Christmas cactus. So there are 3 types. There is the Christmas cactus, the Thanksgiving cactus, and the Easter cactus. The Easter cactus, they are all members of the cactus family. So they're all kind of cousins to one extent, but the Thanksgiving cactus and Christmas cactus are most closely related. Most of the holiday cactus that you see today for sale and that are grown by growers are Thanksgiving cactus. Flashback like 20, 30 years ago, they were all Christmas cactus. And what is the difference? The Christmas cactus will bloom more in December. The Thanksgiving cactus will bloom November. They just have different bloom times. If you want to tell them apart, you want to look at the leaf. At the end of the leaves of a true Thanksgiving cactus, it's going to look like a cat. It's going to have those pointy little ears at the top of the leaf. The Thanksgiving cactus is going to look very similar, but like someone scalped off those ears. And then the spring cactus or Easter cactus is going to be a more oval shaped leaf. So that's how you can tell. We don't have any true Christmas cactus because, like I said, the growers are not growing them. But we're going to go back to where they live because that's going to tell us how to take care of them. So these are actually natively found in the rainforests down in Brazil. So they're epiphytes. An epiphyte is something like an air plant, which is a tillandsia or an orchid. It doesn't get its nutrients from the soil like other plants do. It gets its nutrients from the air and from rain. So you will commonly find them growing in strange little places in those rainforests, nooks and crannies and trees. Sometimes they'll be in rocks. They don't grow naturally in soil. We have them in soil. And that's why it's really important for you to get the right soil mix. You want something really well draining because think of them growing just like orchids in nature out on a tree. They're going to get a nice wash of water and then they're going to go dry. And that's why they are part of the cactus family. So keep that in mind when we get to our care. So we know the 3 types. We've gone over kind of the native habitats. Let's talk about buying tips. Pretty easy. Oh, and these are cat safe, dog safe, so feel free. to get them and display them. Buying tips. This is a little guy. Here's a better looking one. You want to get one where, of course, you have blooms. They should be blooming at this time of year. You also want to get one that has a lot of buds, because when the blooms are gone, you're going to want more blooms. That's probably the most important thing. Secondary to that is you're going to want to inspect what I call the little pads, the leaf segments. You want to make sure they're succulent. So they're going to be plump and juicy. There should be no wrinkles. If they're wrinkly, that means that they were neglected. They went a little bit too dry at one point. I had somebody message me on my Instagram account and said, you know, my Thanksgiving cactus is laying down. Is there something wrong with it? And I said, can you send me a picture? Because I don't know what you're talking about. So you see how this is up. A lot of people have what I call heirloom holiday cacti. They'll be 25, 30 years old. They're going to be trailing. So the older they get, they're going to start to look more trailing. When they're young like this, it's perfectly normal for them to be up. But if yours is trailing, that means it's healthy, it's good. So, but you know, this is what you want to look for. You don't want to see any pads that are yellowing or wrinkled. Bringing them back to your house. And as far as all of these plants here are concerned, the first two we talked about, this is the one that I have 3 of at home. Super easy to have as a house plant all year long. Like I said, we get people bringing in ones that are 30 years old, they got from their grandmother. They rebloom every year. Super easy. But you want to remember, when you put them in your house, you want to have bright indirect light. And that means something different to everybody. But an east window or a filtered west window would be ideal. They definitely want a lot of light. The other thing that you want to make sure of is temperature. They're not really particular. Regular household temperature. My house is a little warmer than most. Cool house is fine. Not really picky. The most important part is going to be the watering. You want to allow them to dry between waterings. This guy I picked because it's ready for watering, and I can do this little trick to show you. Look at that. Comes right out of the pot. Okay, so this is ready to be watered. It's not soggy, it's not moist. And then when you do water it, you're going to want to bring it to the sink. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They want to measure in ounces, but no, this is, you know, this is in the cactus family. You want to go ahead and water it, and it's pouring out. You cannot overwater. No such thing as overwatering. There's only watering too frequently. So I could pour water in this thing all day. It's fine. I just don't want to do that again tomorrow. So now it's getting nice and heavy. You see how it's nice and heavy and it's moist. And once it's done draining, it's ready to go back. How often do you do that, Gretchen? I can't tell you, because everyone's house has different light, humidity, and temperature. You just have to wait until it was nice and light like that, dry, pulling away from the edges. And now this is like much, much heavier. That's how you know. You'll get your own schedule, you'll figure it out, and that schedule will change when we have more light during the summer. They'll dry out faster. In the winter, they're going to dry out slower. But that's the most important thing. Do not water them too frequently. But when you do water them, give them a really good drink. The other thing that you want to do, I inherited one from somebody. A customer gave me a gorgeous gold one, but it was like this because she had never turned it. So when you do water it, give it a quarter turn, because they will naturally want to go towards the light. And if you just water it in place all the time, it's gonna look lopsided. So that's another little tip I like to tell people. Unlike the poinsettia that you don't fertilize when they're blooming, these guys you are going to want to fertilize. You can just use a regular, good, balanced houseplant fertilizer like Jack's Classic 20-20-20 or their houseplant special. We can help you pick that out once a month, just once a month during the blooming. Once it stops blooming, it's going to be just a green plant that you can keep. I put mine outside for the summer. We have a really good care sheet that will tell you exactly, how to take care of it. Honestly, it's a lot of really good information, but you can keep it inside, you can put it outside. If you put it outside, the benefit is that you can keep it out until like October. When the temperatures at night start hitting 50, I wouldn't keep it out much more than when the temperatures at night are 45. That's what's going to encourage it to produce the buds. Now, when I don't put mine outside, remember that bathroom I told you about? 2 years ago, mine were not blooming, budding. I felt like the loser of the greenhouse. So that's when I put them up in that cool bathroom. And honestly, within a week, the buds were coming out. So it's that cool evening temperature that is going to trigger the buds. And we get people every year coming in. If you move it, especially if it's a mature one, my mom had a mature one when they retired down to Florida, it did not bloom for the first 2 years. They get a little bit fussy like that. The other thing is if you buy one and it has a lot of buds, you bring it home, you start seeing the buds drop off. Bud drop is telling you something. It can be telling you not enough light. Usually it means inconsistent watering, but it could also be that it was at a grower, it came to Maryfield, it went to your house. A lot of stress, they're going to drop their buds, but don't worry because the next year it'll put new buds out. Just try not to move it around too much. And they're one of my favorite holiday plants as well because they're very easy to get to rebloom. So I think at that point I can take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, we definitely have a few about the Christmas cactus or the holiday cactus. So I'm just going to go in order. And again, everybody, if we can't get to all your questions, feel free to send us an email. We're happy to address these after class.
I bet there's someone who's wondering about not blooming, but go ahead with whatever you have.
Yeah. Let's see. So this first person says, I have a holiday cactus my grandmother started for me back in 1975. Ooh. I've taken off several pieces over the years, rooted them and shared them. However, the main plant is very thick and heavy and I know it needs transplanting. So what do you recommend for transplanting like an older Christmas?
We actually, again, we call them heirloom plants. We get them a lot. This is one, I actually repotted one for a customer. I needed help from one of my coworkers. And it was like, the caliper of the stems, it was like a tree. It was woody, and how she got it into us without breaking it is beyond me. But they do like to be tightly potted. So we get a lot of people saying, oh, I need this repotted, it's not blooming. No, they like to be tightly potted, but we're talking about a 25, 30-year-old one. If it hasn't been repotted for like 5 years or so, you want fresh soil, you want to examine it, maybe go up a pot size. I would advise you for this specific one that you're talking about, do not repot it until the spring. That would be my recommendation. You don't really want to repot it during the winter. There's not as much light. It's when it's supposed to be blooming. So I would wait until the spring. And then at that point, what you're going to want to do, you're going to lose some of the segments. You're going to lose, your breakage, because unlike this one, they're formed and you're going to try to get it out of the pot and snap some off. If you snap something off, just like I did here, no problem. You can just plant this back in a little pot of soil and start a new one like you have for some of your friends. But the most important thing is sometimes we have to actually break the pots they're in because the soil is so compacted from being in there for years and years. You might have to break the pot, take it out. You want to loosen it. You want to look at the roots, and then you want to go about 1 inch on each side bigger than the root ball. So you're really only going to go up about 1 pot size, 2 inches. As far as the soil, I like to use a really good indoor potting mix. I love Pro Mix, and then I will add some extra perlite to that. Some people prefer to use cactus and succulent soil, or you could use a mix of both. You just want something that's going to drain, but you don't want it to have a lot of sand because you want it to hold on to a little bit of that. But if you need help, you need some advice in the spring and you're local, take some pictures, bring them in. We can, and we do repotting as well. So we do that for a fee. But I would definitely consider that more in the spring than right now.
Thanks, Gretchen. All right. So the next question is, what causes sections of the Christmas cactus to fall off?
So depending, but that sounds like you may be keeping it too moist. You don't want any of these sections. I talked about them having wrinkles You don't want them to be wrinkly, but if they start to get mushy and yellow and they start to fall off, you're keeping the roots too moist. You may be watering it too frequently. It may be in a pot without a drainage hole. It may be in a situation like this. Oh my gosh, please don't tell me someone said that, oh, I give it 3 ice cubes a week. No ice for plants, please, not orchids, anything. You need to take it out of the pot. I always say this, and wait until it's really light and dry to water it. When you lose sections, it means that the roots below there, there's something going on. Either they got too dry, or probably in the most case, it's that they are too moist. So don't try to propagate them. If they fall off and they're plump and they look okay, but I always, in my propagation class I teach, you don't want to propagate with something that is not the healthiest, because you want to have a healthy parent. But I would say, check the watering out. You can always email us a picture and we can diagnose it better, or come into the plant clinic, but it's usually a watering issue.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. The next question is, does Maryfield have Easter cactus in the spring? I know you mentioned the Easter cactus.
We do, actually. We get them in, usually March. They're really pretty. They have a completely different, we just don't have any right now because they're not in season. The flower on them is quite different. That's the real way that you can tell. The leaves are also different, but they're so gorgeous. They're kind of spiky looking. They come in orange and yellow, all different colors. And yes, we get them every year. They're super easy as well. I have one, and literally you just I put it on my cactus and succulent shelf in front of a south window. I have another shelf where I have grow lights, and they're happy. So yes.
Thanks, Gretchen.
All right. We only get them in when they're blooming.
Sorry?
We only get them in when they're blooming.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Okay, so this person has moved a month ago, and she has had a holiday cactus that she's had it for a while. It usually blooms for weeks or months. She propagated it, and then when they moved, it hasn't formed any buds. So do you have any thoughts on why that is?
Totally normal. Like I said, my mom, she moved from New Jersey to Florida. She had a gorgeous one. She freaked out. She's a master gardener. She knew better, but she was like, it's not blooming. And then it bloomed in July, which is, Florida's a different place. Sally's down in Florida. She knows plants behave differently, but it's the transition. Even if you took, when they're older, they're easier, but they also get to be a little bit more fussy as far as they like to be, where it's like grandma in her favorite rocking chair. Don't you dare sit in that chair. She wants to be there. If you put her somewhere else, she's going to be fussy. So you definitely, it's probably just a transition. You may miss a bloom. You may get a bonus bloom in, the summer. They get thrown off. It's kind of like they get their nights and days mixed up. But as long as it looks healthy, the segments look good, put it in a nice bright area, treat it the way you normally would. And hopefully it should be blooming next year or even before. Totally normal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Guess what? I have to talk about our last plant.
That's fine.
So,
right. Thank you.
So the last plant that I have is the Norfolk Island pine. And the Norfolk Island pine is one that is very popular at Christmas. Let me see, I have a little one. Because people were like, I don't want to get a big Christmas tree for my condo or for my dorm room. I'm going to get one of these cute little ones, which is awesome. But there's two things you have to remember. Well, let's talk about, where they come from. So this is the part in my class where I usually say, who knows where Norfolk Island is? And everyone, we're in Virginia, they raise their hand, Norfolk, down south. No, guess what? Norfolk Island is actually a little teeny island. It's a territory of Australia. It's located about 1,000 miles northeast of Sydney. So it's way out in the ocean, little teeny island. So if you think of an island, what do you think of? Surrounded by water, humidity. So there's high humidity. It's a pretty moderate climate. It never goes below 50. 50 is very low there. It's normally between 55 and upper, maybe mid 70s during the year. So very mild climate, lots of rain. So that's going to be important when we talk about the care. But the two things you have to remember are they are not pines. They look like a pine, but unlike a pine, they don't like the cold. We already know they're tropical. So please do not put these out on a little red wagon as a cute little thing on your front porch, because within hours they look very sad. I got a picture from one of my followers. They didn't know what it was. They got it as a free plant on a Facebook pickup, and they said, Gretchen, what is this? And it was, I said, that's a sad Norfolk Island pine. It got cold. And they said, yeah, it was outside on curbside waiting for me to pick it up from someone on Facebook. So you can't plant them outside. You can put them outside for the summer. They'll love you, but they are for indoors. So let's talk about what do you want going to look for when you're buying them. You want to feel them. They're supple. Unlike pines, they're not crispy. They're not hard. They do have these little needles, but they're supposed to be soft and supple. You want it to be uniform. And you want there to not be any browning. Browning when you own it down in the lower area is normal and natural. They will, they get to be huge. They can grow to over 100 feet tall, over 40 feet wide. That's another thing to consider. You have to have a lot of space if you're going to keep it for a long time. But some browning at the bottom is fine. You don't want to buy them with any browning. The other thing to remember when you're buying them, and bring them home, you're not going to see any new growth, because this guy, he's hibernating right now. He's dormant. So you're not going to fertilize. You're not going to do anything until the spring. Very, very easy. But you need to replicate Norfolk Island in your house, meaning you're going to put this right where you have the most sun. And then Pebble Tray would be a great idea, or humidifier. You do not want the soil to go dry on this guy. You want to just water it when the top of the soil feels like an almost dried out sponge. Then give it a really good watering. So remember Norfolk Island, sun, humidity, moisture, and your Norfolk Island pine will be very happy. Please do not buy them with glitter on them. They treat them with glue. It really messes up the plant. They're not happy, but you can feel free to put little ornaments on them. Side note, every year we get somebody saying, sending an email or shopping in Maryfield saying, can I rehome my Norfolk Island pine to you? It's outgrown its space. Last year it was an office building in Fairfax City, and it was over 20 feet tall. It was in a foyer. This is the biggest one we sell. This is a really good, so you see they grow a little bit horizontal in layers. So I don't know if you can see this, but so this guy is getting pretty big. If you have a really nice, you can get one of these big ones. And don't be concerned. I did get an email the other day. Someone said, well, I'm not seeing any of the bright green. In the spring, you'll start seeing a lot of the lime green. That's the new growth. Again, they're not going to be growing now. Don't worry. In the spring, if you have a lot of sun, you'll see them really take off. So I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions on the Norfolk Island pine?
We have a few. One question is, how do you keep them, if you want to keep them about 5 to 6 feet tall, like, can you prune them? How do you do that?
Not really recommended. I mean, yeah, I guess you could prune them, but what's going to happen is, see this beautiful on the top, they just have this really pretty, you could prune that. I guess you could keep them small. But I would, keep it in a tight pot. There's no way around that this thing is going to want to grow into a bigger plant. Yes, you could prune it, but when you do prune them, they just don't have, I wish I had one. They just don't look as nice. It's kind of like cutting the top off of a Christmas tree. Yes, you'll get new growth, but start with a small one and then make friends with someone with 20-foot ceilings that you can gift it to. And I don't want to scare anyone. For it to get from this size up to even this size, it's going to take years. So don't be intimidated. It's going to take a long time for them to grow that big. My parents live in Florida, and there's one there. I thought it was one of those fake cell phone towers. I said, oh my gosh, Mom, we were driving into Stuart, Florida. I said, look at that tree, that cell phone tower, trying to, they decorate them to look like a tree. She said, that's a Norfolk Island pine. And I made her stop. We had to go look at it. It was like way over 100 feet tall. But that's, living in Florida, outside, full sun. It's not going to grow that fast in your house because you don't have the sun that they're used to. So please don't be afraid to get one.
This
Any-
might actually be a good follow-up to that. This person has one that's 27 years old.
Oh my gosh.
It started dropping the leaves really badly, so she wants to know what might be happening to it.
Yeah, so what happens is, number one, at some point you are going to want to repot it, get some fresh soil in there. When they get so big, if she didn't say how big it is, but if it's that old, I'm sure it's big, and nobody really wants to take the, first of all, you can't bring it to Maryfield to have us repot it because it won't fit in your car. A lot of people, sometimes they get so big that it's a real big chore to repot them. I do not ever put soil on top. Don't put new soil on top of old soil. That's just not going to work. The soil's compacted and then you're adding loose in there. It's not going to work. So aside from repotting it, I would examine the light. Sometimes, they can shade themselves out, and that's what they actually do in nature. The ones that I saw in Florida, there's not a lot of leaves, of branches down here, because at some point there's so much growth up here, they're shading themselves out. So if it's losing from down here, that's more of a normal thing. If you start seeing if the top is starting to dry and brown and fall off, that's a moisture or a humidity issue. So you may want to try to up the humidity. If it's not too big, I would encourage you to try to take it and repot it, give it some fresh soil, and just make sure it's getting all the sunlight that it needs.
Thanks, Gretchen. All right, I'm seeing that we're past 1 o'clock. So I'd say if you're good, we can take one more, maybe two, and then we'll go ahead and end it. All right, so the next question actually follows up on the height issue. Are they slow growing or fast growing?
In nature, like I said, down in Florida, if they're getting 365 days a year of that really good light, they can take off. In your house, they're not going to grow that quickly, because even though everyone says, oh, I have fantastic light, I have great light, really the light that you have is not going to be anywhere near what it is used to having, all year long. So, I would say that they're, in my opinion, I would classify them as a slow to medium grower, just because they're not going to grow. They're going to grow in the spring and summer. And then depending on how much light you have, that's when you should start seeing a lot of that lime green growth at the top. If you're not seeing that, you definitely want to fertilize. Don't fertilize now, but in the spring, you can fertilize like with a half solution. Again, we can guide you to the right fertilizer once a month. But make sure you have enough light. The light is the most important thing. But like I said, my neighbor has one. It's quite tall, and it's taken her, let's see, 17 years. I think she's had it 17 years. She moved in 17 years ago, and it's finally getting to be the point where it's approaching her ceiling. And I don't know what size it was when she bought it, but not super fast growers. We can't, if we put them outside and we didn't have winter, yes, super fast, but not inside.
Thanks, Gretchen. All right, so I'm going to say one more, and then I think we're pretty close to having answered most people's questions. But should the pines be sprayed or spritzed for humidity?
So misting for humidity is one of those subjects. You see a lot of these people, especially on social media, new plant people they love. We have a great mister that we sell here at Maryfield. I love it. It's the automatic one, fine mist. And they're spraying everything, and it's so fun to do it. But you know what? It doesn't really add that much as far as humidity. So I would say a humidifier would be my first choice. If you have a whole house humidifier, or you have one that you can put near it. My second choice would be a Pebble Tray. I actually have a large Pachira aquatica tree. That's the money tree, good luck money tree in my house. It's about, I just had to prune it down because it's wants to be over 10 feet tall. I have created a very large Pebble Tray for that, just getting a plastic saucer, filling it up with stones and putting it on there. So that would be my second choice for a Norfolk Island pine. The third choice, if you can't do that, you could mist it once a week with one of those fine misters. it's going to add minimal humidity. It's going to be more humidity than it's getting in your home, but it's not really going to give it what it wants. But yes, definitely go ahead and mist it once a week if, and you can do that in addition. It's fun to do. It doesn't add that much, but it will add a little bit.
Thanks, Gretchen. All right, everybody. Just a reminder for everybody who wasn't able to get their questions answered, you all can email me at sburrows@mgcmail.com. It's just, you can just hit reply to the email with the dial-in information, or you can call the Fair Oaks store. Gretchen's there. You can call any other store. If you email me, I'll probably be talking to Gretchen. I don't answer the questions. I find people who know their stuff to answer the questions. I just do events. So before we close out, Gretchen, do you have anything you'd like to close with? I just want to make sure if there's any last
Along those lines, it's always really helpful. If you are going out and about, don't bring your plant in if you have a question in the cold, okay? Tropical plants. But, we all have cell phones, or friends have cell phones. Take some pictures. So if you're emailing us, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, like the person that said, it's laying down. I didn't know what she was talking about until I found out she has this gorgeous trailing holiday cactus. So couple pictures. And then my biggest thing is drainage, 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 drainage. Every plant in your house, whether it's a holiday plant or not, should be in a pot with drainage holes. And people say, well, Gretchen, you sell these pots. This is an $8 pot from the greenhouse, no drainage hole in it. But this is to be used as a cache pot. That means a decorative pot to put a draining pot in. Do not ever plant in one of these. Don't put rocks down it. It's not going to help it. So I have over 200 house plants. I don't have any plants potted in pots without drainage holes. Okay. That's my what do you call it? Like, no, there's no way I'll ever tell you it's okay unless it's a terrarium. But yeah, so, like I said, come visit, give us a call. Lots of other holiday plants I didn't get to talk about. We have them all. It's beautiful. It's like a winter wonderland. And definitely stop by our Oak Room, our home decor area. Those ladies have done a fantastic job. So if you haven't been out to Maryfield and you feel like you're able to, come on, visit, bring your questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Gretchen. All right, just a quick reminder before we close. There will be an email going out this afternoon with a survey. It really helps us if you can fill those out. And in this one, we're asking you if you guys have any recommendations or requests for future holiday classes. So for those Christmas classes specifically, there's also a chance to win a gift card, and we'll send a coupon. So definitely please fill that out. We appreciate all of you joining us today. Gretchen, thank you so much for taking the time to teach this class. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to just send them to us or give us a call. Thank you all so much. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and enjoy your day.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you. This concludes our call.